you. Hi, I'm Selena. Um, I had an experience when I was a child of a sexual predator trying to pick me up, and I never told anyone. I kept it to myself. My mom remembered I had nightmares, but I never told anyone till I was a teenager.
Sorry, say that again to me. A special, it was
A sexual predator?
a sexual predator.
Yeah, tried to pick me up. I didn't even know what that was at the time. I was, I think, maybe 4 or 5.
So this is a real event?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Good day.
And I experienced a huge amount of shame, even though I never told anyone what had happened. And he didn't actually touch me, but the insinuation was there of what he wanted, even though I really didn't know what it was.
Yep.
I felt a huge amount of shame, even though I didn't understand the experience,
Yep.
so much so that I couldn't tell anyone at all.
Yep.
So where would the shame come from in that?
Well, sexual
instance?
predators are very interesting in their ability to feel children's emotions, in particular children's emotions. Any child who has been made open to the feeling that it's their fault, and anything is their fault.
When bad things happen to you, it's automatically your fault.
Yes, and
Okay.
usually it's our parents that make us open to such a feeling,
Yeah.
that any bad thing that happens to us is your fault. And the parents do this through reinforcement. Like, so when they're smacking us, they say, it's your fault I'm smacking you, you know. So they don't say it's their violent action, they say it's your fault, it's something you did that caused them to smack you. So a lot of children, by the time they're 5 years of age, already believe to a large extent that most of the unloving behaviour perpetrated towards them is their fault. Does that make sense? It's because they're bad somehow. You know, that's the feeling. Now, sexual predators are very, very sensitive to that feeling in a child. Can you see why? Because the sexual predator gets to abuse the child, and the child would automatically feel that it must be their fault. And nobody has to say anything to them about it. The child will feel that it was their fault. So they feel sexually dirty and ashamed, and they feel as a result, this is as a result of any perpetration of sexual abuse, and they, in addition to that, feel that it's all their fault. Now, a sexual predator is very, very open to that feeling in the child. So whenever the child has this feeling in the child that whatever will happen to them that's negative has to be their fault, this is an attraction to sexual predators. And in fact, the sexual predators often have spirits with them who are sexual predators who mark out the children in advance. So they walk into the room and already the sexual predator knows the child because the spirits with the sexual predator are telling the adult predator who's in the flesh, are telling him who is actually open to this concept or idea about themselves.
So I actually did exactly what he needed by not telling anyone. He knew I wouldn't.
Correct.
Yeah.
He knew you wouldn't. He knew you
So
wouldn't.
he couldn't get caught.
Yep.
I couldn't describe the car or anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
He knew you wouldn't be able to because you had already accepted that it was all your fault.
Wow. Great.
Does that make sense? And by the time most children are 3, 4, 5 years of age, they already have these strong beliefs that anything negative that happens to them is their fault. And so this makes them very open and very easy for an adult sexual predator or an adult abuser to abuse the child and get away with it. Yeah. Now, in some cases, it's just very fortunate that they didn't have the circumstances and therefore couldn't abuse us. But many times you can feel their intention. So a child usually can feel the sexual intention of an adult quite significantly. And then if the child thinks it's already their fault, they already believe that the sexual attention coming from the adult is their fault before the whole thing begins even.
Yeah.
So the child has been prepared, really, by its environment to accept this feeling that it is all their fault. Yeah, and it's very sad when you think about it, isn't it? Because the average adult parent wouldn't conceive that whenever they say to their child, it's your fault that I'm smacking you, and basic things like that, that they're actually preparing their child to accept the blame of adult perpetrators of abuse. The average parent wouldn't believe that. But that's actually what's happening psychologically.
So educating children to protect themselves still couldn't...
Doesn't help.
It still happens because
Spot on.
they can spot that child that's not going to tell no matter what.
They can spot the
Because they-
child,
yeah.
and not only can they spot the child, but the spirit's with them. There's a certain emotional thing that happens inside the child, and there's a colour that starts appearing in the tummy region of the child, that a sexual predator just can scan the room, and I'm talking about a spirit one now, can scan the room and see every child who has that particular colour in their bowel region of their body, and the second chakra region of their body. They can see exactly who those people are, and they'll target them straight away. They'll motivate the sexual predator to target those particular people. Does that make sense? And it will only be circumstances that prevent the abuse from occurring, because the reality is the child's emotions are already open to accepting the abuse. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
yeah. And this is why a lot of people say, well, my parents didn't abuse me, but my brother-in-law, or my father's brother or someone abused me, or my uncle or my grandfather did, or whatever. And this is because there is this preparation going on inside of the child emotionally from the environment that the child's growing up in, that's causing the child to accept the blame of very negative events that the child is involved in, rather than seeing that the child's not to blame. Yeah. Okay.